afternoon, LinkedIn. I hope everybody is well today. I'm Mel Johnson. I am a digital marketing strategist, and I work with businesses and individuals to help them develop strategies that they can confidently, I can't even talk today, deliver that can help their business grow. And today I'm here with Fliss Ayling to talk about reframing your thoughts to be more confident in your marketing, because we know from the businesses we work with and the individuals we speak to that it's a real barrier to so many people. So if you're watching, do say hi and pop any questions or comments in the chat and we will answer them at the end. But Fliss, I'm going to pass over to you just to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Mel. So I'm Fliss. I run a brand called Loud Women. So my whole thing is about helping women to really step into their confidence, find their purpose in their business, and to just fall in love with going out there and selling it. And I think it's all about building a business that they just love to promote and love to talk about, and a business that loves them back as well.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely key thing, because I think, like, I work with and speak to so many absolutely brilliant people, a lot of women, and marketing is the real barrier for them, because I think what we see particularly is for a lot of smaller business individuals, a lot of their marketing is driven on the surface by social media. I think they go on and you go on and you see is in this really crowded market and you see people talking about all these amazing things, and and then those kind of negative thoughts come in where you're like, oh, they look really successful, that they seem to be getting loads of engagement, loads of likes on their posts. Like, what the message I want to say, I feel like everybody's heard it before. So I think the purpose for us is kind of unpicking that today and having a little bit of a reframe around what confidence actually means, which I think leads me on to the next point. And I know you talk to your clients a lot about this, is around this kind of perception of confidence. For me, I think the traditional perception of confidence is people who are considered to be kind of extroverts and kind of loud and like talk about their products and service all the time, and perhaps are treading into kind of narcissist territory, which everybody worries about and nobody wants to get into. So do you want to kind of talk a little bit more about quashing that perception of confidence?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest myth in confidence that I feel we are just sort of bashed with our entire lives is that confidence is a personality trait, that you're either a confident person or you're not. And yes, I think there's definitely an area of confidence that definitely falls into arrogance, and a lot of people are really concerned about overstepping. But I think from my perspective, confidence is a skill, and it is something that should and can come internally. Whereas I think quite often our confidence comes from external sources. So one of the big things that I found was when I left my corporate job, which I've been doing for 20 years, I felt very confident in my marketing abilities. I was a very confident person in terms of my role, and when I was dealing with my team and when I was dealing with clients, I could walk into rooms with really powerful people and hold my own and communicate to them what I felt they needed to be doing. And then I left corporate and I thought that marketing my business would be an absolute cinch, because that's what I've been doing. And I really struggled. Because actually, as it turns out, that confidence was coming from the armor that I wore, the armor of the brand and the business that was behind me, the job title that I had, the responsibilities that I had. And once those were gone, that confidence actually wasn't in myself. It wasn't there. That self-belief that I could go out and create something and sell myself just completely vanished. And that's when I kind of started my journey into confidence and finding my voice again and finding what I was good at outside of the job title. So yeah, I think, and people say, I get clients that say to me, I said, how confident do you feel? Do you think you're a confident person? And they'll say, no, I'm an introvert, so I'm not very confident. I'm like, confidence doesn't have to be loud and extrovert. Confidence can be very quiet. But it's about a belief in you and in your ability to do the things you need to do to get where you want to go. It's not about how loud you are and how many people you can talk to and the volume that you speak at. It's very much rooted in that belief in you and that you have everything that you need to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, actually, just kind of touching on that, because I worked in media sales and marketing for about 12 years, and I had a really awful exit from my job. And in hindsight, I probably should have taken them to court, but hindsight's a fine thing, and probably emotionally I wasn't ready. And when I came out of work, my confidence was really in tatters, and then lots of things happened, and sort of I retrained, upskilled, and started running my own business. And part of the sort of work that I do is always been kind of driven by the fact that I don't want people to feel the way that I felt.
Yeah.
And I think, but that does take some work. And I think, going back to what you were saying, I think, a lot of, and probably particularly the women that you work with, and a lot of the business owners that I work with as well, a lot of them have come out of that corporate career, and I think there's two things there. It's you've got, as you call it, which I think was a really good analogy, that armor, which is where you're kind of backed up and validated by that job and that career, and it's kind of like, how do I then translate that into running my own business? But also, I think there's if you've been, unless you've been the person who is responsible for actually attracting clients into that business, I think a lot of people have never actually really thought about how do we actually drive clients. So then there becomes that whole kind of negativity and that sort of perception of like, oh my God, this is taking me such a long time, because nothing's instantaneous, and they feel like everything isn't working. And I think when you're already struggling with your confidence, or what that you think that perception of confidence looks like, it becomes an even bigger thing. And I think that's sort of, you get into that kind of negative thought process, and looking at all of these different things and saying, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you need to do it this way. And I think you and I talked about this when we first spoke, all of this best practice, and like, you need to be following this blueprint is absolute rubbish, because you're a person, and the people you work with are people. So what works for one is not necessarily going to work for another.
And I've done that. I've sort of tried on other people's clothes, for for the first sort of 18 months of my business. I went to every masterclass, and I was adopting people's strategies, and it was right for them, and nothing fit properly, and it all felt a little bit icky. And it took me a while to get the confidence to start rejecting things and saying, you know what, I know that works for you, and I can see a bunch of other people have followed it and have got great results. It doesn't feel good for me, so I'm not going to do it. Now, obviously, there is a difference between rejecting something simply because you don't want to do it and rejecting something coming from a place of, that's not the right fit for me. There's something else out there. There's another way of doing it. But yes, that first bit, I mean, my corporate career, I'd done a lot of pitching. So I had stood in front of clients, I'd read briefs, created solutions for them, and pitched to them, worked with them, when they had questions, and I was pretty good at winning clients, but I didn't do any of the business development part. So I wasn't reaching out to those clients. I wasn't building relationships. I came in at the point where we were in the mix with one of the solutions in the mix. So again, I was like, oh, I've done sales. I haven't done sales. But yeah, the corporate, from my experience and from the number of women that I've spoken to, corporate does a real number on us, in terms of like a real number on us. I'd almost, some of the women are speaking to, some of the experience that are almost liken it to some level of PTSD. Like someone, and even if they haven't had a horrible exit, the impact of daily belittling and being knocked down, being shouted at in some cases, being overlooked, being constantly feeling like you have to prove yourself, someone picking up on every tiny thing that you do wrong. Like, if you're in that for years and years, the impact on your on your confidence and your self-belief is massive. And we don't always realize it until we're out of the situation, until we've left. I did a big piece a couple of months ago on the corporate hangover, and I interviewed a bunch of women and asked them to share me their stories. And even 2, 3, 4 years later, some of those conversations became very emotional when people started talking about, what they went through. And at the time, were ever so grateful for. I kind of call it like a little bit of a what's the condition where you fall in love with your captors? Can't remember what it's called. Stockholm syndrome.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. Like, you're trapped in it, but you feel ever so grateful for the opportunity, and you do everything you can to create a version of yourself that's acceptable, that people, validate and give you a pat on the head, and you end up pushing down all of the parts of you that are told and not acceptable, that don't fit and not what they want. But actually, in terms of us showing up for our business, we have to bring all those bits back up. We have to find all those pieces and bring them back to the surface and almost make ourselves whole again.
Yeah.
Because that's what people are going to want to connect with and want to buy from.
I mean, as I touched on, I had quite a difficult exit from my previous corporate role. And it's probably taken me, this is 9 years ago, and it's probably really only been in the last couple of years that I've actually been able to kind of revisit it. And actually, I'm feeling a bit emotional about some of it now, because I think, it does have a lasting impact. And I think, we all kind of have to work through that, which I think is probably a thing that people perhaps don't realise. So I think this kind of perception of confidence and this kind of coming out of the corporate world and, rocking up on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever it used to be, and hearing all these kind of, personal branding, you need to be doing this and you need to be shouting, I think I think for me, those become those kind of shoulds of like all of the narrative that we've been taught our whole life. And probably as women, although my husband, the thought of him marketing himself, I think he'd just like literally rather die, is we've always been told, I think, to be quiet, to not shout about things we're good at, things we're successful. I think it's kind of sort of, I think having that kind of reframe and how you work through that and recognizing that is really important.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I think it's kind of, I mean, obviously this isn't something we can cover in sort of 10 minutes because it is a massive topic. But I mean, what would be your kind of, like, I guess, quick tips or some ways that people can get started on kind of banishing those shoulds and actually feeling like confident and comfortable in themselves to actually come out and say, these are the things I'm good at and this is what I stand for. Yeah.
There is space for everyone. We quite often we'll rock up somewhere and go, all these people are more experienced than me, they've been doing it longer, what do I bring? And it's like, you bring you. Nobody else is going to deliver the service the way you do. And just because there's people out there that might be further along than you, doesn't mean there isn't a space. If that were the case, those people probably never would have started because there was people in front of them. And the idea is, in a couple of years' time, there's going to be people behind you coming into the same space. There is enough work and there are enough clients for everyone. And yes, it's good to have a look around and see, check out your competition, check out the people that are serving the same clients. But as soon as that starts to feel like comparison, it's the very worst thing in the world. And then what happens is you'll find, there's a temptation to then try and emulate those people or kind of not copy them, but they're talking about this and that's going really well, so I'm going to talk about that. Whereas actually what people want is your authenticity, your perspective, your approach. Even if you share similar ideas, you're not going to say it in the same way. You're not going to deliver it in the same way. You can bring some personality to it. If you're normally a bright, bubbly, colorful, person, bring that into your profile. People want to know. If you're a complete nerd and you're into, you spend like 10 hours a day gaming, bring that into your profile. It's the stuff that you love, share it.
Yeah.
And, if that's part of your personality, you can bring all of that into your profile. And it's those things that people will connect around. They're not going to connect around another, here's my 5 top tips and here's how you create this. And, you know, the stuff that's a Google away, anyone can find that. They want to know what you think, and they want you to talk about it the way you want to talk about it, because you may be offering, sorry.
No. I was just going to say, I think kind of what you've just said is actually really important. I think going back to that, not getting too hung up on your competitors. I mean, funny enough, I actually wrote about that in my email kind of fortnightly email that went out this morning. But I think it is really important to understand your marketplace. And I think one of the things, and it doesn't matter the size, it doesn't matter if you're an individual or you've got 5 employees or 5,000 employees. The only difference between you on the surface and your competitors down the road is your people. Because, you know, and the way that you and your people deliver your work and care about your customers. And then, you know, and I think that's what creates that emotional connection with your clients.
Yeah.
And I think actually by looking at your competitors and understanding the marketplace and not getting, but absolutely not getting too hung up on what they're doing, because also we really don't know if that's actually if they are as successful as they look. I think for me, I think as you said, you know, there's room for everybody. So I think, you know, we've all got different skill sets. Like, I'm a massive fan of collaboration. I think it can really help your confidence if you work on your own.
Yep. Find people. Find your people, find other business owners, get yourself a little support group. It's so important. Other people that are on the same journey, but perhaps are good at other things, the things that you're not. Because even that can, you know, being able to help other people, get advice from them, but also give advice. It's a constant reminder that you are really good at what you do. And there's a huge difference between you being great at the delivery and being able to serve your clients and just not yet being good at the business side yet. You know, you're just not yet good at the sales and the marketing and the promotion and, you know, creating funnels and email marketing, like all of that stuff. That's all the business stuff that wraps around your service. And just because that stuff isn't yet where you want it to be, doesn't mean that anything has changed in your ability to service those clients. And that self-doubt can really creep in when you're not there yet, and you're not selling, and your audience isn't growing, and, you know, your posts aren't getting engagement. But it really takes time. But it's also a really great opportunity to test, you know, is to put yourself out there a little bit, because if there's not that many people watching, it's much easier to go out and do something maybe a bit silly or a bit cringy, or, you know, as it's about 3 days is the average lifespan of a piece of content. And so
I think it's even less on some platforms.
Yeah.
I think actually that's a really good point for people watching this to bear in mind, is that, you know, and you and I talked about this before we went live, you know, I think there's a few things here. Is what's the worst that can happen is that, you know, the worst that can happen, and I think we all get hung up on this. We, like you said, we wait until we feel confident. We wait until everything's perfect. I mean, I've been working on the bloody update to my website for 6 months. If I was using that as an excuse, which I have done in the past, by the way, I don't think I wouldn't be doing anything, because, like, you know, you're never going to get to the point. And I've had clients who've done this. They've built these amazing things, and but because they just got into this nitpicking of, like, that's not perfect, because it's like the kind of inaction comes in. So I think and I'm going to ask you in a minute, because you were talking about kind of how you dealt with kind of building this resistance to things that might happen. I think there's a lot of things here. I think it's like absolutely like focus on the positives. So you might not get, and also a really important thing is the majority of people watching on social media are lurkers anyway. So they'll be reading your content, they'll be seeing it, but they may not post and comment. And I think this is particularly true depending on the action that you're asking people to take. If you're asking someone to go over to your website to sign up to something, you know, the likelihood is they're going to go over to your website and sign up to something. They're not going to then come back and comment and say, oh, thanks so much, I've just signed up. Because that's the reality, is that's not how that's not kind of how people or marketing works. But also I think there's it's, you know, so focus on the positive stuff, because actually most of us don't need 20,000 followers and 500 comments on each post, because we need the right people in that audience.
Small and perfectly formed. I actually had so I went properly all in on LinkedIn. I sort of last January I started to show up as myself more fully. It took a little bit of time to get really comfortable with it. And then I think from August last year, so almost a year, I went all in, and I'd had, create my strategy, and I was making connections and starting conversations and, building my community, because that's what it is. It's not followers.
Yeah.
It's my community. It's people that I can learn from, that teach me, as well as inspire me, as well as prospective clients. If all we're doing is rocking up on LinkedIn every day trying to sell to people, that's quite soul destroying. But if we're turning up and we're engaging and we're commenting and we're getting inspired and we're getting ideas for our business and we're learning from people, that's just a much more joyful experience. And then those connections with prospective clients are going to feel much more genuine, because we're in a really great headspace and we are sending them stuff into other people's profiles and all this great stuff. But I grew my audience. I think it was on 1,100 last August, so I've not really done anything with it. 1,100 last August, and I've got just over 4,000 now. But I've curated it carefully, so I only accept connection requests. Connection requests from women. I've got about 180 currently from men. I'm not going to accept, because I don't know them. I've never spoken to them. But I clear out regularly. So if there's somebody that's bringing content in that's just not bringing me joy or bringing me down, I'll remove them. And I add women that I really want to talk to. Because if it gets too big, it's completely unwieldy. I had a post a couple of weeks ago that went bananas, and it's still going. It's on like almost 60,000 impressions and hundreds of comments. And I think I had 600 profile views in a week. Now, I normally mine my profile views for potential. Like there's a couple of weeks there that I just went, it's just chaos. I'm not even getting in there. But, for the people that have 15, 20,000, more than that followers, I cannot even imagine what it must be like to try and manage the notifications. And it's bigger is not always better.
Yeah.
And keeping it small and engaged. And also you've got a far better chance of getting a positive reaction to your content if you keep that community and keep your audience really focused on people that you really want to engage with, people that you'd hang out with in real life.
I think that's a really good point. And actually, I read in Richard Vanderboom's newsletter over the weekend, who he publishes their annual report on the LinkedIn algorithm. And I think it started with it was, and this is something I say, but it actually really resonated with me, because he said, you need to be creating content for your potential clients, not for your peers.
Yeah.
And I think there's something, I like data, and I think it's really, and as somebody who worked in marketing for a long time, like we understand the importance. And I think it's so easy, particularly with social media and email and all sorts of different things, to actually just focus on those, like, what are the vanity metrics. So it's like, okay, this post got, I've posted this and it's gone bananas, like you've said, or people are really liking this post. But actually, if those are, but it needs to be for the right people. And I think quite often it's easy to fall into that. It's really easy to fall into that trap of like creating that content that is going to give you that kind of quick fix of validation.
Yeah. I mean, if you share something that's controversial, or, even if you share a cute video of your dog, you're going to get engagement on those posts because people love dog pictures. But yes, that doesn't, and it's, and that's not to say that you shouldn't do it every now and then. If you have a dog and it's part of your personality, share a little picture. I did a you know, I gave my dog an annual appraisal last year and made a little post out of it. But again, it's not about the dog. It's about having a little bit of, you know, I like to have a little bit of fun in my content. I like to make people smile. I like to make people laugh. So, you know, but it's not clickbait stuff. It's not, you know, the posts, you know, I do have other posts that go a bit crazy when I talk about equality and feminism, and, you know, the barriers that a lot of women face in the professional spaces. And they do tend to, you know, they tend to bring a lot of people in, but those are my kind of, you know, funnel fillers. But the vast majority of those people are not prospects, but they are amplifying my brand every time they you know, comment or post it on. So, and part of my brand is about doing, you know, stuff like this and speaking engagements. So that works well for me, but those are not things that bring clients in. The stuff that brings clients in are the more, you know, practical, helpful, the stuff that I create just for them.
I think with that, and I thought all of that really interesting. I think my point could get to was, I think, you know, it's if you're not very confident and you start posting that type of content and it seemingly does well on the surface, you continue to post that type of content because it's giving you that little kind of, you know,
little serotonin
little boost. But I think actually what happens with that after a while is actually you know, it will actually, over time, it will knock your confidence, because suddenly one day you're just going to go, my God, I'm publishing all this content and I'm not actually getting, it's not converting into what I want it to be. And that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, I'm going to post this and I want a client. It could be, you know, you want more traffic to a website or whatever your objectives are. So I think just in terms of kind of overcoming those kind of confidence issues and those shoulds, I think it's being really clear about what your objectives are for that particular platform or piece of content that you're using. You know, how is it helping people? And it might be, you know, it's helping people because it shows a bit more of my personality and creates that emotional connection. But it might be about it's helping people because I'm tapping into their pain points. So I think it's like, I think for it's the kind of that confidence it's kind of doing that sort of internal work where you, and I know everybody talks about it, and we've said this today, you know, and actually going back to like, what's your why, and what you know, what are your values, what are the things you care about, like what do you want your work to deliver, and what do you want to be remembered for? And I think once you've got quite a clear idea of that, and it's difficult to do it on your own.
It's almost impossible to do it on your own. To look objectively at your own value that you offer other people requires you to see your you know, your entire personality, and you know, it's not just what you're doing, it's the way you're doing it. And there's going to be all these amazing, wonderful little things that you do for your clients when they work with you that you don't even think about it, because you're just being you, and you're so used to you, and you are boring to you. And not only that, you know, when it comes to any negatives and flaws or perceived flaws, you know, we got a microscope up to those when it comes to us, and we don't even realize that nobody else sees any of those things. So yes, it's almost impossible. It is impossible to have an objective view of ourselves, because we are just full of subjectives and blind spots and, you know, preconceptions and, you know, inner naysayers and all of the things that will just completely get in the way. So yes, always do that part with somebody else. Have somebody else. And you know what? It's the most amazing feeling in the world when somebody gets to know you and then they sit back and they say, right, this is how I see you. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh my God, like, I sound amazing the way you've just said that. You know? And it's like, and I love that. I do that for my clients, and I love that moment when they go, well, you know, I say to them, you know, all of these things are true, aren't they? And they will say, well, they're like, well, yeah, but the person that you've just described sounds awesome. And I'm like, that's who you are, and that's how other people are going to see you. And it's important that you can own that and kind of lean into it, but it sometimes requires somebody else.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think there's two things. It's just like, no one sees what you see, the positives and the negatives.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think, but also like, I feel like quite often it's in there. So I've been working, I'm working on a bit of a kind of secret project because at the moment with somebody, so I'm not going to say
Ooh.
who or what or anything about it, but somebody I worked with before lockdown. So when the world was completely different. And anyway, we started the process, and I came and I asked her to fill out this time like a kind of basically a briefing document, so all of the things that they kind of expect about marketing, but also about her values and her business. And when I read through the document, I was like, everything that she stands for and what she's good at is in that document. She know, but it's, and I was like, I think you know that, but you need me to kind of say to you, sometimes it's a case of saying, actually, it's okay to talk about these things and say, this is what I stand for. And I think like, I think that can be kind of a barrier for some people. And I think this is, for me, is kind of leading into this whole thing around expertise, because I think, as you said earlier, you go into a room and you think, oh my God, these people have got loads more experience than me. But actually, you are the expert to your audience. People don't necessarily want to know, and also, but also quite often expertise is just an opinion. It's somebody's perspective.
Well, yeah, and also those, not everyone's at different levels. If I'm just starting my business, I don't need to be sitting down and getting advice from, Stephen Bartlett on doing it, because I'm so far away from that. I'll get advice from somebody who's been doing it 2 or 3 years, because they're close enough to where I'm at to remember what it was like. And they've done the work recently enough that they can share with me what my first next steps are. I don't need someone that's running a multi-million-pound company to give me business advice, because they're so far removed from where I am and what my next step is. They're 50 steps in front. So if you know something about something that somebody else doesn't know, you have value. You absolutely have value. The more of that knowledge you have, the more you can potentially charge, because you're then charging people that are a little bit further along and have a bit more money and have all of these things. So, but if you know something that somebody else doesn't, you can build a business around that. And if you deliver it in a way that's really engaging, that's really personable, that's really authentic, and you understand what your clients need, then you can build a business. You can make money, you can sell to clients. It doesn't matter how many other, I'm in marketing. There's millions of us out there. And I started my business post-pandemic when there was a huge influx of people, going freelance. And I've managed to carve out that niche for myself, because I was able to really just tap into the bit of my work that I really, really love. And I got rid of 90% of the marketing activity that I've been doing my whole career, because it's just boring. They want to manage PPC accounts and, create reports from Salesforce. I don't want to do any of that stuff. It's, it's just boring. I love the messaging and the storytelling and the coaching, and the confidence building. I want to see these women shine. I want to, when they come in and they're all like, I don't know what I'm doing, and maybe I should just go back to work. I'm like, hell no. We're going to find a place for you. And not, they come out the other side, and not only do they feel more confident, they're so excited about the business and about going out and talking about it. So all the ick and the worry about the promotion and the sales falls away, because they're no longer looking at it as just this add-on thing that they have to do. They're like, I'm so convinced that I can help people. All I want to do is go out and talk to people about how much I can help them.
Yeah, I think that is I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's doing that work around your values and your messaging, and actually not just focusing on like you said what you're good at, but what do you actually want to be doing? Because you can be really good at something, but if you don't love it, then you're not. It's going to be much more difficult to talk about that.
Yep. And actually, the more you kind of specialize on one particular problem, the easier it's going to be to find clients. Because it's going to be much easier for you to communicate it to a very specific subset of people that have that very specific problem. I don't sell to anyone that wants marketing. I don't sell to people that only want performance marketing. They say, I just want you to increase my traffic. I want you to do this.
Yeah.
That's not what I do. I can do it. I'm really good at it, but I don't enjoy it. So I'm not doing it anymore.
Right.
But that's, I think, but that again took me a little while to feel comfortable with, because I had this idea that the breadth of my skills was what gave me value, and that people would pay me to deliver that service, rather than, if I started taking things out, I wouldn't be able to charge as more. People wouldn't want to, work with me. So I was kind of throwing away everything that made me valuable when I wasn't.
No, I know, and I think that's why you need to get other people involved, I think, and actually ask for feedback, do the work, and sort of understand what your customers think about you, but also people that are close within your network or that you've worked with previously, because that, I think, all of that can really helps you to understand what you stand for, what people see you, and then kind of have the confidence to articulate that messaging. So I think we need to wrap up in a minute. The reason I was fiddling with the door is because my mother just I could see my mum coming up the road with my daughter's stuff. I was like, please don't knock on the door really loud. But I think there's a few things here. I think what we hope, I know there's a few people watching, so do pop any comments or questions in the chat. I think there's a few things here. I think it's stripping back and doing that work around what you want to be doing, digging into what's actually working, because I think that can give you a massive amount of confidence. And actually, I when I look back through things, I'm like, I totally forgot that I'd done that thing 3 years ago and it worked really well. Because quite often we get stuck in doing. I think also just holding in that, like, what's the worst that can happen? Because I'm a massive advocate for people who have taken breaks from their business and their marketing, because people say, it's bad for the algorithm, but you're a person, you need a break. And at the end of the day, I think, like, some of the best ideas can come when you're not sat in front of a computer at your desk. I think all the best ideas, but I think it's the easier the more you do things, the easier it becomes, because it becomes part of something that you do, rather than something that you're like, I should do that, and you keep pushing it back and procrastinating. So I think it's if you're really scared about putting a photo of yourself out there, just hit press post, close your eyes. What's the worst can happen? Because it will never be as bad as you think it does, and it does get easier. I mean, I've started doing my own videos again, and I used to do them all the time. And actually, I'm desensitized to the sound of my own voice, and I don't really care if I look a bit rubbish, to be honest, because that's not really, like, I'm not really a kind of shiny glossy. That's not my brand. But I think I stopped doing these videos, and actually, like, ages ago, for lots of different reasons, and it was just really difficult to get back to doing them, because although I had the confidence there, I'd built that resistance up in my head, whereas actually now I'm like, no, I'm just going to try and do, like, one a week, sit to that, not worry about it. And actually I think I've done them 3 or 4 weeks consistently now, and the one I did on Tuesday just felt a lot easier. I sort of felt like I was in a bit more of a rhythm, and I was less worried about it. So
and sometimes it's take it. We always talk about, isn't it, what's the worst that can happen, but what's the best thing that could happen?
Because we're all wired for negativity, unfortunately.
And we expect bad things to happen, and we see other people getting trolled online and stuff, and we think that's going to happen to us the second we post something, or we're going to post one post and it's going to completely destroy our business if we get it wrong. None of that is true. None of that is true. And actually, the vast majority of people on the internet are really positive. The vast majority of people that read your content are going to leave nice comments. And the thing is, once you start posting regularly and you start to build up a bit of a following and a bit of an audience, you're going to receive so much positivity that and it will happen even when you get that first negative comment, that first troll, that first person in your DMs, they're going to be one voice out of many. And you're going to have all of this, all of this positive feedback on this side, and this one person is not going to be the big deal that you think it might be. Like right now, you feel like it would crush you, but those people are not commenting on posts that don't have many comments on them, or brand new people. They're just not.
It's so easy to get fixated on these things. Like I a lot of the work I do is kind of running workshops and training, and prior to the lockdown, I used to do kind of small group workshops in person where I'd have like 8 to 10 business owners would come along. And I ran one in probably February 2020. It was just for the lockdown. And I used to get everybody to fill out a feedback form at the end.
Yeah.
And so I got my 8 feedback forms. All of them were, the majority were, so I had 8 feedback forms. 7 of them were really positive. Would book again, really enjoyed the session, etc. One of them, she wrote, she didn't like the session, and the main reason that she didn't like the session was because everybody in there knew each other and she didn't know them. And like, anybody watching this and you've been chatting to me 40 minutes, like I'm quite informal. And I like to ask people questions, and nobody in that room knew each other. Right. Prior to that session, most of them knew me. Like they'd kind of either they'd met me at an event, or they'd spoken to me, or we'd interacted, and she just booked a ticket. And I was so distraught for like the whole afternoon when I came out of the session. And I was at the co-working space I go to, and I've been running the sessions, and the owners, when people work, they were saying to me, you're not focusing on this. We hear people coming up your training sessions, they say all of these different things. And it was just that one tiny piece of negative feedback was a thing that I actually was honing in on, even though the feedback actually wasn't really to do with me.
Yeah.
So I think, it's
we do it all the time. We focus on the one negative and completely forget and disregard all of the positive that we've had. That one thing, that one person. And it is really important for us to get comfortable with the idea that we are not for everyone. The things we say are not for everyone. But the saying is like, a friend to all is a friend to none. If you're out here, keeping your voice down and not really saying anything, not wanting to upset anybody, you're also not going to attract the people that absolutely want to hear what you have to say and are going to hang on every word, and are going to absolutely love the content that you put out. But with that, you are going to repel some people. Repelling people is not a bad thing. Those people that say that she's not for me, that service isn't for me. Good. You never have to speak to them. You never have to be on a sales call with them. You never have to take them on as a client and then have to deal with them.
You don't have to follow them on social media either if you don't like them.
Yeah, you don't have to have them in your world. So the whole thing with your content is you're saying, this is me, this is what I'm about, this is what I'm selling, this is who it's for. If you want it, welcome. If you don't, I'm giving you some really good signals that this isn't the place for you. And that's absolutely fine for you to do.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, well, Donna has written, I'm just going to read out Donna's comment. I don't know if you can see.
Hi, Donna. Yes, I can see.
So she said, love this conversation. It was needed for me as someone who's completely rebranding with new offerings. I started to pick up in this new space and now, so this is a good reminder. I think both of us can speak from experience, Donna, that it's really challenging things to do. And I think just as a kind of final point, I think particularly as women, because I don't just work with women, but I am one. I think we'll keep going at something because we know it, even though it's the wrong thing, because that's what we're known for. We don't want to step out of that comfort zone. And I think I don't know anything about Donna. I'm going to go and connect with her and look her up after this. But I think it's really doing that kind of whole rebranding and thing and new offerings is really challenging because you're going to change the messaging and what you're talking about. And that's like kind of out of your comfort zone anyway. And then of course there's a nagging thing of like, what are people going to think?
Yeah. It's really scary. And
well done.
Well done. I think so. Even when you know that it's the right thing and you know that there's a need for it, and but that early stage where you're putting it out there for the first time, it's, you know, it's so fragile and it's so careful, and there's so much of your heart in it that the idea of it getting criticized or bashed or not working, just, it's such an emotional time. You know, and I'm the same. I, you know, recently launched a brand new offer, and I've gone out there with it a little bit. You know, and I was in the DMs this morning, you know, with another business owner, just going like, oh my God, like, it's a disaster and nobody's going to want this. And, you know, she's like, what if I told you, please? You know, and I catastrophize. I get to that point where I'm like, you know, I've got 7 women in the program, but a couple said no, and I'm like, oh, they think it's rubbish, they think it's no good. And she was like, no, they didn't.
But also, I think what's important to remember as well is, like, no doesn't always mean no, isn't always categoric no. It can be it can be no right, it can be right no right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's no for a million different reasons. Yeah, and actually, you know, most of them don't have anything to do with what you're selling and what you're offering. But I think this idea of kind of, when you're changing tack, which I did, you know, for the first 18 months of my business, I talked about marketing strategy for medium and large businesses. That was my whole thing. And then I changed tack and I started focusing on women in business and smaller businesses. And I wanted to talk about the obstacles, you know, and the things that I'd experienced in corporate that were holding me back. But I still had all these old people from my corporate life still in my profile, you know, and it was really kind of scary to start putting that stuff out there and sharing vulnerability and, you know, sharing my stories with a world that, you know, isn't always that kind. And it did take a little while. It did take a little while to build up. And I was really worried about getting negativity, especially talking about anything to do with women and feminism. You know, you're always going to get some of the man babies in the comments. And I was really worried about that. So I spent a few months over on TikTok with my anonymous profile, getting into fights with strangers in the comments. So if I, you know, found videos and I found men leaving gross comments, I would get into arguments with them. And they've said some of the most horrendous things to me, but it wasn't my face, it wasn't my name. They couldn't identify me. And it allowed me to kind of, you know, just cut my teeth a little bit and expose myself to it. But I learned how to respond, what were good responses. I watched other people responding and I was like, that's such a great answer, I'm stealing that. So I felt fully armed when I started doing it. And of course, I've had like 3 comments, I think, in the last year that I've been, you know, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and positive ones. So it was not the issue that I thought it was going to be.
You're an over-preparer. Yes. I have absolutely loved chatting to you, but we're going to have to wrap this up because LinkedIn is going to cut us off. So Louise commented, which I think is an absolute golden comment. I will find clients I want to work with are very easy to work with from the get-go.
Yeah,
I think that's absolutely, and I think by being confident in your marketing and actually understanding what your values are and what you're good at, you attract, and this is why it can be beneficial to have a smaller audience as well. You attract more of the people that share your values. And that just makes them so much easier to work with. And that's what, you know, no matter what you're doing, you know, that will bring you joy. I mean, I have like quite varied clients at the moment. And actually the commonality between all of them, and this sounds really cheesy, is they're actually really bloody nice people. Who I get on with and trust me to get on and do the work that they are paying me to do, which hasn't always been the case. So I think, and also that again is really important for your confidence, because if you're having to put yourself out there and you've got clients that aren't behaving themselves in the way that you want them to behave and aren't, you know, allowing you to do a good job or do what you need to do, that can be really soul destroying. So really soul destroying. I mean, I've had to sack off clients. You know, I had a client that literally took over my life for a few months and really, you know, I came out a little bit battered and bruised. You know, but I've had clients that, you know, told me that I'm not, you know, not what they want. But again, you know, in the same period of time, my skills haven't changed.
I can still do the thing that I'm doing. But, you know, you'll have one client that thinks you're absolutely the best thing since sliced bread, and another client that's ready to, you know, throw you in front of a train. They're so fed up with you. So it's so important to find that good match, because actually it isn't anything to do with your skills. It is about what you're like to work with as a person, and where you can be your best self. You know, if you find that actually somebody that's overly rigid, or, you know, doesn't give you any space for creativity, doesn't listen to your ideas, just wants to direct you, if that's not how you want to work, you're not going to enjoy it. But actually some people prefer that. They're like, just give me a list of things to do and I'll do it. I don't want to, you know, don't want this disorganized chaos and throwing things at me last minute. So again, you know, nothing wrong with either of those approaches, but it's about understanding how you like to work and then finding people that like to work that way too. And, you know, you'll have a much better experience than mismatched clients.
Oh, thank you so much.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Details in the chat once we're live. Thank you for everyone who joined. I think if you have got any questions or any kind of feedback, or if you watch it later, then do please pop it in the comments, because I know I'm not just about Chris, but it's actually really useful for other people, I think, to see kind of people's experiences and their questions, because we all have similar questions and not all of us like to ask.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you all soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mel.